Welcome, everyone, to episode number 3 of the Ready or Not podcast. I'm Scott D. Woods, Vice President for Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships for Ready.net and Broadband.money. In this show, we'll explore many different topics around the so-called digital divide. We'll highlight the people and organizations that are doing the hard work in communities around the country. We'll focus on community leaders, local service providers, state and local government representatives, and national advocates. My goal is to educate, to discuss different ideas, and to provide you with a perspective from those who are doing the work on the ground. I want you to hear and learn from their direct experiences and backgrounds. The format of Ready or Not is simple. We will discuss important broadband and digital equity topics, as I want you to hear the perspectives and opinions of those who are working to connect unserved and underserved communities. They're building and expanding broadband networks and implementing digital equity programs to ensure we can meet the goal of solving the digital divide. But this show will also feature a lighter and entertaining side, focused on the personal insights of my guests, their stories, their personas, and their journeys. Today, my special guest is Joshua Williams, Executive Consultant with the City of Houston's Office of Innovation and Fuse Corp. Joshua is responsible for the development and implementation of the city's digital equity strategic plan and the city's establishment of its first digital equity office. He recently authored a white paper entitled Developing a Digital Equity Office to Close Digital Divides. As a result of his leadership, the city was recently named a 2022 Digital Inclusion Trailblazer by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, or NDIA. And their trailblazers are models for other local governments to pursue digital inclusion efforts in their own communities. The 6 trailblazer indicators are: the local government has or directly funds at least one full-time staff dedicated to digital inclusion initiatives, policies, or programs. 2, the local government has a digital inclusion plan or is in the process of developing such plan. 3, representatives of the local government participate in an open access digital inclusion coalition. 4, your local government has conducted or has plans to conduct a published survey on internet access and use by its residents. 5, the local government directly funds community digital inclusion programming. And finally, number 6, the local government is taking steps to increase affordability of home broadband service. In today's episode, we will explore and discuss key findings and recommendations in his efforts to elevate digital equity, access, and inclusion in the nation's 4th largest city. We will talk about the impact and implications of the city's recent award and recognition as a digital inclusion trailblazer, as well as the city's digital inclusion mapping effort to ensure affordable broadband connectivity and access to the city's more than 2.3 million residents. Finally, we will explore Houston's arts culture, music scene, as we know Houston has grown beyond just being known for NASA, big oil, and rodeos. And with that, we will welcome Joshua Williams to the show. Josh, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to the entire conversation. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I want you to know as well, as we talked about in our pre-meeting, the last 2 guests who have joined the Ready or Not podcast have gone on to bigger and better jobs immediately after recording this podcast. So hopefully, if and when you're in the market, you'll definitely go on to bigger and better things as well. But let's start off with this. So please provide us with an overview of your efforts to close the digital divide in Houston, as you have accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time that you've been leading that effort.
Absolutely. And, it actually my effort started in the education world. I was a director of operations and finance with the charter system. And we're, at the height of the pandemic. And I was tasked with keeping students and their families connected so they can continue their learning from home, telehealth, and et cetera. And so the pandemic is at the height. And I was forced to become computer distributor, tech support, fixing the laptops, hotspots, and et cetera. But it was all in the effort to make sure we were keeping those underserved communities that we were serving, keeping them connected. And so in the height of that work, I was connected with Texas Education Agency, Region 4, Harris County's Commissioners Court, T-Mobile, and I'm building all these partnerships and doing all this work with these great people. And we put together a solid plan. And I learned about Fuse Corps, which I want to say is a national nonprofit that partners with government agencies and executive leaders to lead strategic initiatives for underserved areas. And they notified me that Houston is looking to bring in someone to support their Office of Innovation and develop, like you mentioned, a comprehensive digital inclusion plan, but also make sure that it is sustainable and future proof. Sorry. I joined on January 2021, and they will let you know we hit the ground running to make sure that we had a clear vision of where we were heading and who we were trying to serve. And so in a year and a half now into the position, and I'm just trying to make sure that everything is in place to be sustainable, whether I'm at the head of the ship or not.
Absolutely, and that's a great segue. I want to circle back about your time with the students and parents and leaders in the pandemic. And what was that experience like? Again, for those of us who went through a pandemic, we heard about a lot about students in unserved and underserved communities who did not have access or robust access, not just to the infrastructure, the broadband networks, but also devices
Yes.
and getting teachers connected with devices and a new way of teaching. Can you briefly explain to us what that was like and what you learned in that process?
Absolutely. It was eye opening. And we've spoken before about this, and I'll share it with everyone listening. And it was eye opening because myself, like a lot of people, you just operate under the assumption that we're in it was 2021 at the time, 2020, 2021. Everybody has access, right? Some type of access to the internet and a device, and we learned that is not the case. That is not the case, and it was just so shocking because we're in a technological driven world. But again, that doesn't mean everybody has that access. Everybody has that equity. And so that's where I really truly learned the importance of digital equity. And I know we'll touch on that in more depth, but that is when I got my lesson in the importance of digital equity, because I've always served students that were in underserved, unserved areas, underinvested communities that mirror the community that I grew up in, the city that I grew up in. So I had the understanding of they may not have the economic equity that they need. They may not have the education that they need, the jobs that they want. I understood that, but the pandemic showed that this digital equity piece is a completely new layer to them not having access. And so it was an eye-opening experience. And in the education world, you have to be able to think fast and juggle multiple balls, wear multiple hats. And so when it hit, we just had to figure out, how do we keep people connected? How do we get the teachers connected? How do we, develop some kind of normalcy, for lack of a better word, in this crazy time, to make sure students continue their learning and make sure they're connected for telehealth and et cetera.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your role with the City of Houston and Fuse Corps and that partnership with the mayor's office?
Absolutely. So Fuse Corps, I got to give them a shout out because next Friday, the 30th, will be their 10-year anniversary. And so it was established to do just that, partner with individuals and organizations that are trying to better underserved and unserved areas. People have backgrounds from nonprofit to private to public, various experiences, but at the core, it's all about making sure that we can serve people in local government agencies and the communities that they serve. Sometimes that's through planning. Sometimes it's strategic initiative. Sometimes it's both. In my case, it was both. We just want to make sure that we are partnering with local government agencies that we can fill in a gap that they may a need that they may have. They may be understaffed. They may just need a fresh opinion or a fresh viewpoint on things. And so that's where I came in at. And for me, it was important to do a couple of things. First, we'll start with goal setting. You know, I shared this with you. The scope of the project, you have some pretty big numbers, right? We have hundreds of thousands of people that need internet, hundreds of thousands of people that need devices. And it's like, we don't have a budget. So like, well, I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. So how can we how can we get a more concentrated approach to make sure that with my time, because the fellowship that I'm in, it's a year.
Mm-hmm.
It could be extended, but it's a year. So I have T minus 12 months to make sure that we can develop plans and initiatives that will be sustainable. And so we started with goal setting, because I'm not from Houston, but I've lived here since 2009. I visited a lot during my college days as well. I have family here. So I have familiarity with the neighborhoods that were underserved. And those neighborhoods are called complete communities. So they are so underserved that the mayor's office developed a department to serve just those 10 communities. And I'm sure they will probably add more. So I had familiarity. So I knew there was a socioeconomic need in these communities. But again, going back to education world, I learned that these areas also have a digital equity need as well. So we started with goal setting. Let's pinpoint these areas that have the highest need, and that led us to data. We got our data and our mapping, and that's where I started to bug you all the time to learn about mapping. And so we got data and mapping together. I wanted to leave them with a plan for that as well. The next piece was free and low cost internet services. Like, we have to get creative and find out the people that are just like us trying to help and serve these communities at an affordable and or free opportunity. I wanted to locate those providers. The next was building coalitions, which again tie back to you being with NTIA at a nationwide level, federal level. We got local coalitions as well, and just building coalitions with private ISPs, corporations. And that last piece was funding, and that so trying to develop a pot of gold or pots of gold to fund these efforts and make it sustainable so that they can, just be self-reliant and not have to, go out and search for funding. Because that's something I learned very early on. The funding has been cyclical, sometimes, not available at all. So just developing funding opportunities that will be long lasting.
So you talked about goal setting, and I want you to explain for the audience, why is digital equity, adoption, and inclusion so important for the city's residents and businesses?
Yeah, again, we serve these other areas of need that we know of, food, education, workforce, and et cetera. And those are pretty evident. They're well known, I would say. And the digital equity piece was just, it was just not being served. And they recognized that, but, they recognized that they had initiatives before. And I say they, I mean the city of Houston. They had digital equity initiatives prior to me joining. But when the pandemic hit, they're like, we really got to ramp this up and pay more attention to this issue. And because it spills over to so many areas of life. I'm in education, pandemic hits. I had to figure out, how do I serve my students and families, my teachers in the education world. If I'm in health, pandemic hits, I have to figure out, how do I connect with my patients while they can't come to the office, especially those that are most vulnerable. They can't get out to be out in the public world. So how can I connect with them and make sure they still receive service? If you're looking for a job, how can I connect with you and you don't have access to a computer? How can you apply for this job? How can you apply for this economic assistance that you need and you don't have that access or you don't have the know-how to use the device and the internet? So it just spills over to so many different areas. And that's why we see that there's an importance to make sure that those communities that have been left behind in so many different areas, this isn't just an additional area that they're getting left behind in the digital world. Everything's digital now. You need the internet for everything. And so we want to make sure that we are serving that need as well, on top of all the other needs that we have to help out.
Absolutely. And just thinking back to, the pandemic, it seems like everyone now is acting like it's over, and it may indeed be over.
Mhm.
But just thinking about in the pandemic, the dissemination of information up into the vaccine and vaccination, and where, vaccine and medical information was available. Thinking about communities that got information over the
Mhm.
internet or were able to access, the CDC and local health department of it, access to that information and to be able to govern themselves accordingly, versus communities that either don't have access or don't have the devices to access or the skills to don't to access that information. How far they are indeed left behind in terms of vaccination or information that they need to help them and their children govern themselves, and as we move through the pandemic. So I think the pandemic shed a lot on a lot of
Yeah,
inequity, not just in the medical the telemedicine space, but in the broadband space and digital equity space. So the work that you're doing in that short amount of time that you've been there has been very, very impactful and very important. So let's transition. So you're in this position now for a little more than a year. It's a fellowship program. You're in city government as well, right? So transitioning from a teacher and business background, what have been some of your challenges and your wins? And I ask this of all
yeah.
of my guests because I want to get the full comprehensive view of both the challenges and the wins, the obstacles, and things that you would improve on. So from that lens, what has been your experience there in the short time, because you've got some very critical wins and moving that ball forward in digital equity since you've been in the position.
Yeah, you know what was an adjustment and challenge. So I come from an underserved area, underinvested, where you have to be able to think fast and adjust and make things happen, do more with less. And I transitioned into corporate. I took that same approach, and just it was just a grind. Like I'm accustomed to this. Things move fast. That's okay. I'm used to this. Education was the same thing. I'm responsible for not just the students, families, teammates, teachers, etc., to make sure we move the needle as much as we possibly can in 12 months. And so then you move me into the fellowship. I'm in that same place. You got 12 months to move the needle as much as you possibly can,
Mhm.
but also make it sustainable as well. And so in government, I may want to move on something immediately. And in government, it doesn't always move
It just doesn't
does not move
happen.
that fast. And and just for the I'm not. Me and Scott have talked before, so I'm not saying
Absolutely.
anything new. Or
That's new, right?
I'm not
It
saying
just
anything that I haven't said to the city of Houston and with Fuse or any of my other counterparts. But it doesn't always move as fast, and so that was an adjustment in the beginning. But the adjustment that was made was just making sure that if there's somebody I need to bring along in this process, that I'm asking that question: who needs to be brought? Who do we need to include? Who do we need to speak to? Where are the conflicting interests that they may have? And big lesson is just how do we meet each other in the middle? It doesn't have to be a complete. Doesn't have to be my complete vision. You may have a piece to add on, or you may have a requirement in your leg of the government or your department, and that's fine. Like, how do we meet each other in the middle? So just figuring out how to compromise, negotiate, and make sure that needs are met on all ends, but most importantly, the needs of the people that we're trying to serve. So that was a learning experience. And you know this, so I'll share it. Data and mapping, that was a big one, and it still is, and we're going to get to a point where it isn't. I'm saying that, but I'm hopeful for that. But data and mapping, and people in Houston will tell you, City of Houston, I bug people a lot because I wanted us to get to a place where there wasn't a question about the accuracy of the data. And I still want us to get to that place where at least the accuracy is at least 90% or higher.
Mhm.
And we're getting there now. I wanted to have, I wanted to have location very specific, down to granular, like who has
Mhm.
this and who does not. I want to bring it to that door, like Domino's delivering a pizza saying, hey, at this house, XYZ lane, I know there are X amount of people in the house. They don't have access to internet and or device, and or they have access, but it's not high quality.
Hmm.
And so getting that together has been a challenge. It still is, but we at least got to a nice start. We're having a conversation. We have a map, and that we will continue to have those conversations. The city of Houston will long after I'm gone. So that was a big challenge, and just finding money, finding funds, But what I wasn't going to do is let that stop me from providing that free, low cost service. So we found
Hmm.
ways to do that, but that has been a challenge. But again, pushing the city of Houston in the direction of saying we want to have multiple pots of gold, or we want to have a digital inclusion fund of our own, where we can fund our initiatives and fund our nonprofit partners and whoever else is trying to do this work. We have that money ready and available.
Yeah, absolutely. You highlight the bureaucracy of, of
Yeah,
government itself,
yeah,
right? Particularly in a city that's as large as Houston, right? I
absolutely.
don't know if for our audience, people always hear that Houston is the fourth largest city, but just the scale landmass of,
Yes,
of
yes.
Houston is huge. Like the entire metropolitan area is so vast and so very different.
Yep,
That creates its own challenge in trying to navigate the systems and the cultures of Houston
absolutely,
city government and South Texas, right,
absolutely.
as well. So you touched on a lot there, and I want to focus in on our first segment
Yep,
as we talked about much of the nation's focus, his attention is centered on the BE program, which is primarily infrastructure based, but it has digital equity components in it. The mapping and the development of the FCC's data maps. We really haven't heard much about digital equity and inclusion. As you are aware, NTIA has required in the IIJA grant programs that digital equity and inclusion be woven into comprehensive themes in those programs. So my question to you is really broad. The question is, why digital equity? Why does it matter? How important is it to the success of the infrastructure grant programs and local projects? And then how does it tie in into that mapping? So again, just as a broad level, why digital equity?
absolutely. And it's a lot of those reasons that we mentioned. You have certain people that have this equity, that have the access, is readily available to them, and then you have a group, rural, urban, whatever the case may be, they do not have that access. And it's been that way for years, but the pandemic has now really put the spotlight on that, saying, look at all of these millions of people that do not have access to something that we think should be like a utility. It should be a human right at this point.
Mhm.
So that's why digital equity is so important, because you need access for to a computer, to the internet, for so many different reasons.
Mhm.
I know people going crazy with TikTok and all that stuff. That's, you need it for that too.
Right, right.
But just to live life, you need the internet.
Yeah.
Just to apply for jobs, go to shopping, etc. You need the internet, and if you can't have that in these areas that we're referring to, they're already underinvested and behind on so many
Mhm.
different layers. And then if you do not provide digital equity, you're just going to add another layer that they're behind on, but it's going to, move that goal post even further for them in those and every single other area, from education all the way to healthcare. So digital equity is important to us is because we know we have areas that are underinvested, marginalized communities, black and brown
Mhm.
communities that have so many needs. So why not provide this digital equity as well, on top of servicing all of those other needs that they have? So that has been the focus, and I'll say, when I joined on, we were screaming at the top of our lungs, and we were saying, "Look at this socioeconomic data. Now look at this digital equity data. Like,
Mhm.
this can't be, not in Houston. This can't be." And so you start to hear leadership. They're fighting that same fight for us now, where they're pressing people to say, "No, how are you going to supervise digital equity? We know you want to partner, but how will you serve these target communities that we have identified?"
Mhm.
And so that's very encouraging, and I feel like, once I transition, that focus will remain there. Digital equity for these people that need it the most, and then we can expand and and,
Yeah.
and make things better for people that already have this access.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, those of us who have it, how much easier life is,
Absolutely.
right? When was the last time you went to a bank, right? A physical bank to conduct a transaction,
Absolutely.
right? When was the last time, you some people have never gone to a grocery
Yep.
store, right? They just order online or order food online or, homework and you name it. We do all of these things involving technology and computers, but it needs
Needs
access.
access.
And for those of us in our communities, right? Black, brown, white, blue, circle, tree, doesn't
Yep.
matter. If you don't have it, you're being left behind.
And one thing
Right?
I do want to ask out, when we say access, we mean high quality, reliable, affordable access too.
Affordable,
I want
absolutely.
to make sure I throw that in there in case anyone
No,
watching.
no, no. Let's go down there. So you said high quality, affordable, right? What does that mean? What does that mean in,
Yeah.
in practice? Because you hear it all the time here in DC
Yeah.
at the policy level. We always throw we want high quality, robust,
Yeah.
affordable broadband. But as you break it down
Hmm.
into your level, right? The city, the residents, the businesses,
Yeah.
what does that high quality, robust, affordable broadband service mean
Yeah.
to the people that you
So
represent?
for us, what we have been pushing for and what we would like to see, we'll start with speed. You know, minimum standard of speed has been 25 and 3 for some time.
Mhm.
And for us, I'm if I check my speed now, it's going to say 100, something along those lines. So the speed is going to be higher, well above the FCC minimum standard. And I know there's discussions of increasing that speed standard to 120.
Yeah.
We'll take that also. When we speak to ISP providers through our partnerships or
Mhm.
potential partnerships, that's one layer. Like, you have to provide. Hopefully, you can get us to 100 and 100. If you can't,
Mhm.
you can at least meet us at this new FCC standard of 120 and show us that you have the capacity to build out down the road to get them to 100 and 100 or higher. Because that's the thing. Also, we just want to make sure this is future proof. 25.3,
Mhm.
that's no longer the standard. 2022, maybe 120 is a standard, but in 2032, what will be the speed standard then? And so we're trying to think ahead and make sure that people in River Oaks, they have that access now. So the people
Mhm.
in Third Ward, they should have that access now and down the road. So that's high quality. That it's high speed. It's reliable. Meaning that I think of Acres Homes as one of our target areas. If you ever visit Acres Home, service, cell service, internet service, it is all very, very choppy. There's a lot of disruptors.
Mhm.
I'm not a technical expert, so I can't define what those disruptors would be, but I know there are disruptors, and it's pretty evident. We had a
Mhm.
community event, Acres Home, a couple months back, and again, we bring everybody in to have this session, and they need to connect to the internet. So choppy, everybody's your service drops, it picks back up, it drops, it picks back up. We don't consider that reliable. We want them to
Right.
have, if you're in River Oaks and you are able to do cartwheels and still remain to the internet and jump up and down, whatever the case may be, there's a thunderstorm, inclement weather, and you still have connection because they have put high quality, resilient, sustainable equipment to provide that connection to you. That's what we want in the underserved communities, and affordable. If right now, if you want a plan that's 100 and 100, it costs anywhere between maybe 80 to 100. It varies. So this is a guesstimate, so that will vary, but it's expensive. And we learned during this pandemic that a lot of the residents that we were trying to provide services to, even $10 a month was a hassle. And if you're outside looking in and you never experienced life in an impoverished community, you're thinking, what, $10? Everybody has $10. Yeah, you may have that money, but then you have multiple people that depend on you. You have multiple needs. You have grocery shopping, provide health service, and etc. So now that $10 is more so like, how do I spend this $10?
Right.
Do I get internet and or a hotspot or a device, or do I put food on the table?
Yeah.
Uh,
I often say, how do I spend this
how do I
last ten
spend this
dollars?
last
Because it's not
$10?
just $10; it's my last $10 or my only $10.
Yes,
Right? Do I do that to put food on the table?
absolutely,
To put gas in the car to get to work?
Absolutely.
to help my children out,
Right.
or do I spend it on crappy broadband
Right.
internet?
You
Right?
have all
In many cases, we're talking
yeah.
about, right?
You have all of these competing needs, and so you have to
Right.
decide how do I use my last $10. And some of these residents that we serve, they just have higher priorities, and so how can you make it affordable? How can you make it free? If there's a way we can make it
Absolutely.
free, that's even better. I'm all about free. So if you have something free and we can get something to people free, then we want to do that as well.
So let me ask you another question. In discussing and having these engagements with your ISP partners,
Mhm.
either publicly or privately, have you ever asked them why is there such inequity in service, between Third Ward and Riverside, or between the communities? And can you share with the audience
Yeah,
those, if
absolutely.
you can, what those responses have been?
I'll share this story. I may have shared this with you before, so if I have, bear with me. But I remember early on in my fellowship, I joined a call. It was between an ISP and different departments within the city, and they were thinking about, or they were discussing an opportunity to provide free community Wi-Fi in certain areas, right? And so I'm on the call and they provide the zip codes, and I'm like, well, that zip code looks familiar. And so I type in the address, and one of the addresses was for River Oaks. And if you haven't been to Houston, just River Oaks is whatever nice, well-off area in your city, your prospective city. That's River Oaks. And then another area was Memorial Park, Memorial Running Trail, that area. And again, just picture a very nice green area. The air is different. Envision that. And so I just had to, again, my in my position, Fuse Core, why I'm here is to be that disruptor and just
Mhm.
ask, what is the criteria for deciding where these resources go?
Mm.
And I was told it is based on needs of the community. And there was another one I forget, and I forget because when I heard needs of the community, like my jaw dropped, and I'm like, wait. So we have 10 identified areas for sure that have a deeper need, more of a need than these two areas. Like I know these areas, so I
Mhm.
know they don't have a great need for this resource, and so why are we providing this resource to these two areas? And we know, if I know you know as well, that they
Right.
have we have areas that need this resource a lot more. and and that was the turning point that shifted a lot of resources, planning, and attention to the areas that needed the most. So I'm glad that conversation was had. But we
Mhm.
asked those questions like, why does this resource go to this area? Why is your planning going to this area? And in so many words, I take that back. We had someone to be very candid with us and tell us it was like return on investment.
Yep.
That was a focus. And for anybody listening, that always bothers me when I hear people say that, because it we look at these areas like there's no value in them,
Mm.
and I'm like, well, in Third Ward, when I lived in Third Ward, you look at the housing market, there was a lot of investments being made into this area,
Mhm.
to buy homes, to purchase land and build businesses. So you see the value there. You can't say there's any value. If there was no value, there wouldn't be any businesses in these areas. But you see them popping up left and right. So you see the value. It's just, so when you say return on investment, do you mean you want an immediate return on investment?
Mhm.
What's your financial forecast? What have you planned for your numbers? Because there are people in need. They have a need for the service. How about we find a way to make it more affordable where you still get your return on investment? And we'll get into like building public-private partnerships, but
Absolutely. No, you're talking a word, man. I think
yeah,
people need to hear, because we oftentimes, particularly with the big large monopoly providers,
mhm,
right? We always hear return on
yeah,
investment, return on. It's a business decision, right? But these are people decisions too,
absolutely,
right? When you're not investing in some places, in some neighborhoods, you're making a qualitative assessment
yes,
that there's no value there,
yes,
not just from a business standpoint of is, how many months or years it's going to take for me to
Right.
recoup this investment in numbers, but investment in the people and the businesses who live
Yeah.
there. And I think this is where a lack of representation comes in, because it shows the community that you're not invested
Absolutely.
in their success,
Absolutely.
right? And so when communities don't have that investment, right, and then they look across the way, usually across the railroad
Yep.
tracks, and the running park has it, and the park has it, and the boat front and the waterfront has it, but I need it,
And I don't have it.
right? And I don't have
And I
it,
can't
right?
afford
And
it.
then exactly. So we'll get off on that. We can go off on that. We can go off on that one all day,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I want to pivot back on this just for a second, because your efforts, and that's a great segue, because your efforts have led to the implementation of the city's first digital equity office. And so, what is the status of that based on the white paper that you
Yep.
produced, the award, and what's the status of the implementation of that,
Yeah.
the city's first digital equity office?
Well, I'll say I believe in that plan, and I believe in the need for the office so much. I emailed it directly to the mayor. So I'm like, look, I need to make sure your eyes see this. And he did read it. He had his team printed out, and he just asked the question like, how can we make it happen? And a couple of weeks ago, we had a check in with our team with Fuse and our team with the city of Houston to again just touch base on that and say, um, this can be something to put in place. We can support you to put it in place and get it established. We just want to make sure that we communicate the importance of it, why you should have it, why it will help with your efforts to sustain this work, and just have you have a flagpole. You plant your flag and you say we recognize that this is a need, and now we need to establish an office and a team that will serve this need and keep it going for years to come. And so, what we're going to do, we're going to try to see if we can establish, not establish, schedule an innovation lab and have people come in to do just that. Put together some more strategic brains to say, how can we make this happen? Where have you seen success in other cities and other counties that may be doing this work as well? So that's the next step, just to put our heads together and plan to make sure that in the next few months when I transition out, you have a solid plan with goals, action steps, deliverables, and you begin the process of trying to recruit and bring someone in to stand the office up.
Great. So that leads me to my next question, and I think that's perfect segue. Right. What should local communities do right now to develop and prepare for the digital equity requirements in these upcoming programs? Like, so based on your experience and what you've done, if there are local government leaders and community leaders who are listening right now, state broadband office leaders and representatives, what should they be doing at this stage to develop and prepare for the requirements in BEAD and digital equity and all of the other programs that are out there?
And so this will sound simple, but communicate. We're all trying to make sure that everybody gets served, and we're trying to get access to the funds to do that. So communicate and then collaborate. If you may have a plan, you want to avoid this. If we're trying to serve the same areas, we can do that better together than as individuals or individual agencies. If we both want to serve Third Ward, how about we compare notes and we discuss if there's any potential for us to partner and apply for the grant and partner and apply for the implementation of the plan. So I think really communicate, collaborate, but also educate. There are a ton of webinars going on. NEIA, NTIA, Broadband Money, Ready.net. Everybody is putting together webinars to educate people on how they can be positioned to prepare to apply. For these grant funds. So I think collaborate, communicate, educate, but also get your data together. Really make sure you have. It may not be 100% perfect, but you have a plan or you have a roadmap. You have some way to identify the areas that you really want to serve. So in the event you get the money, you make sure it gets to the right people first. So I think those will be my 4 areas: communicate, collaborate, educate, and data.
Absolutely. That data piece is so important, as you know, particularly with the NTIA programs,
Yes.
reliance on understanding of where your unserved and underserved communities are, and the impact of any investment and program will be key. And understanding that data and identifying that data down to the granular household and business level, it's going to be fundamental between success and failure of these programs. So that's a great point. Let's transition to segment two, which I want to talk about. It's entitled Mayors Mapping and Missed Opportunities. Again, another perfect segue here. On my first two episodes, I discussed with Josh Edmonds and Leslie Durham sort of this prevailing view and argument that cities, urban areas will be significantly underfunded
Yeah.
under BEAD and other federal grant programs in favor of rural areas. And expanding broadband infrastructure in rural areas will dwarf the impact and the funding in urban areas. And this competition dynamic, as you know, will play out in Texas, as Texas has three or four really large cities surrounded by rural areas and rural areas in between. So I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Josh and Leslie. What is your opinion on this underlying urban versus rural competition dynamic?
My thoughts, and we shared these thoughts with our federal partners, our state partners, our local
Mhm.
partners, is you you have to go where the need is.
Mhm.
So again, a data piece, you want to make sure that, because we know this, there are urban areas that have a need. There are rural areas that have a need, but we're talking about digital equity. How
Mhm.
equitable would it be if we ignore one and serve the other? And so our stance has been partner with us, communicate with us, look at our data, ask us questions about our urban areas as well, and just communicate with us and let us learn about your rural areas that may need this help as well. And let's put our brains together to make sure everybody gets served. And I'll say we've communicated. So we have a state broadband office now in Texas, and I will say this: we partner with Harris County. We consider them our partners, and that partnership led to a regional partnership with San Antonio, Dallas County, anybody in the state of Texas that is doing this work. We all get together on a regular basis. We meet tomorrow, for example, and along that way, we've engaged the Broadband Development Office here in Texas, and that has been one of the topics of conversation, because there was even legislation where it was clearly stated that the rural area, this money was going to be for rural areas. And so you just have to use your voice and
Mhm.
communicate and say, this data that we have shows that this is a need in these urban areas as well. How can we make sure that we are planning to provide and support both of them? And so we've had those conversations. We continue to have those conversations, collectively and individually,
Mhm.
just to say that please don't forget about these areas that need it just as much as these areas are needed. And we can all partner together, collaborate, and make sure that we're serving everyone. Um, because I know a lot of money is coming in, but you've been doing this long enough to know that there are so many people that need that money,
Absolutely.
So we want to make sure that this once in a lifetime opportunity is going to serve everybody that needs it. That's suburban, urban, rural, whoever is in need. Critical need, higher need, top priority need. They get the money as well.
So let me ask you a question before I pivot
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
Texas broadband office, because you brought it up. So I want to pivot to that. But let me ask you, in your expert opinion, do you think the $42 billion in B, the $3 billion, almost $3 billion in digital equity, the match percentage, the private equity money that'll be used, do you think all of that money in total is enough to significantly make an impact on the digital divide?
Enough? I'm not so sure. And
Okay.
and the reason and it goes back to what I mentioned. I know, and you know even more than I do. When you look at it through a nationwide lens, with all of the states, all the cities and counties that we have,
Hmm.
now that we are really doing the digging and really looking
Hmm.
into the data and seeing where these needs are, they're mass. And so you're going to have so many different agencies, individuals competing for those billions. They're going to be exhausted. I think they're going to be exhausted a lot sooner than people may think, because you hear the number and you're like, wow, that's a big number. 3 billion.
Right.
You know what I can do with 3 billion? Yeah. And so about the other 100 million people as well need that access to the money. So it's going to be it's going to be about data and mapping, making sure you can clearly identify where the needs are, and just fighting that fight of making sure that the money is going to the agencies and the individuals, no matter their zip code, their geography, that the landscape of where they live, they have a need, and we make sure we get the money to them. But I think that money would be exhausted sooner than later, in my opinion.
Okay. All right, I'll take that as an answer. You didn't answer the question, but I'll take that as an answer.
I think, to be clear, I think it's a nice amount, but I do think the need will outweigh the funds available. So I'm not. I'm glad that there's even this discussion of that money coming in.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But I do think that when the grant applications come in, that we start deciding where that money goes, I think it will be exhausted.
Exhausted before, exactly. Even though it's in excess of,
Yeah,
as we see in behind me, $75 billion, right,
yeah,
or more, when you factor in private investment and equity and the match and all of that.
yeah.
It still may not be enough, but hopefully we'll be smart. And I
Mhm.
think this is where the mapping is so important, and we'll talk about that in just a
Yeah,
second. But I want to transition back to your interaction with the Texas Broadband
yeah.
Office. So I didn't learn this from you, so I want to be clear, but I've learned in doing the research and preparing for this that some local community leaders throughout Texas are highly critical of the state's broadband plan that was released earlier this year.
Mhm.
Right? Specifically, they feel that the plan vastly overstates existing broadband connectivity and availability in urban areas. And so,
Mhm.
my question to you, Josh, is: do you agree with that assessment, or is there room for improvement in that state broadband plan that obviously is going to guide Texas's implementation of these broadband funds?
Yeah, I think there's going to be room for improvement, and I can say that because, again, we've been in communication as a region. We've been in communication with the Broadband Development Office, and that is something that we're using our voice for. Um, I do think we meet with them next month as well. They're going to start trying to do more meetings with local government agencies and just people with boots on the ground. So there's a line of communication to try to improve upon that and clear it up. But again, as I mentioned, there's legislation where the focus was on the rural areas.
Mhm.
And so there's just no getting around that. But I will say, to their credit, they are at least giving us a listening ear, communicating with us and meeting with us on a regular basis, whether that be monthly, bi-weekly. And we're just staying in communication and holding ourselves accountable and holding them accountable as well, and saying that you cannot just overlook us, or like you said, overstate that. Well, they're in Houston because that's the approach that I ignorant approach that I had. Like, we're in 2020, 2021. Wow, so many people don't have access.
Mhm.
So it's Houston, right? Fourth largest city. But that means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of just solving the problem or answering the question of who needs what, and when it comes to digital equity. And so I will give them that credit. We are in communication with them. We have stated, and again, I'm not saying anything that we haven't had conversations with them about.
Mhm.
We know there needs to be a focus on serving urban areas as well, wherever the need is. But we know you've identified the need in rural areas, but you need to communicate with your partners in the DFW area, in San Antonio and Houston, and even in your backdoor in Austin, in the urban areas as well. Because in
Mhm.
those urban areas, what do you find? You have underserved, impoverished
Mhm.
communities that need equity. And so we can't deny that and say, well, this area has more of a need because they're in this specific geography of the city, the county, the state, as opposed to these areas. I guess you may be able to just figure that out because you're in Houston Metro.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Great. Let's fast forward a little bit because we were talking about the importance of mapping, and you opened the door. I think that the key to the funding
Mhm.
is going to be on mapping. We'll talk about the FCC's mapping in a few minutes, but I want to talk about your mapping effort,
Yeah.
right? So what you've done with the city of Houston is create interactive maps to identify geographical gaps in connectivity
Mhm.
in Houston and the greater Houston area. Can you share with us the city's data collection efforts and the result of that mapping initiative?
Yeah, it's so when I came on, I was learning quickly. So in every part of my professional career, whether it was in finance, data is important. You need to. If I'm supporting fund managers or I'm supporting companies and they're investing with us, they want to know how their fund is performing. Is there another fund that they should invest in instead? I shift over to education. I need to know. I have 25 students. I'm responsible for producing. Growth in their learning. I need to know where they are educationally, behaviorally, physically, emotionally before they even step foot in the class. Data is important there. Coaching teachers, leading schools, data is important there. And then you move into this. So I walked into this knowing the importance of data. I'm not a data expert, not a mapping expert, but I knew like, hey, you want me to help you accomplish this goal, and we don't have any money right now. So I need to know specifically where is the most need and where should we devote our resources. And so that's why there was such an emphasis and importance on data. And so we said, hey, we don't have a map just yet. But before we even get to that part, I want to look at the socioeconomic data to make the case that in these areas, low levels of education, high levels of poverty, some areas the poverty is above the nation's rate of poverty. And so I said, before we even get to the digital equity, the connectivity data, let's start there. Who has the biggest needs throughout the city?
Mhm.
And of course, that led us to the complete communities. And that is the piece about the map. Yes, it captures Houston, but specifically it focuses on these 10 neighborhoods that are the mayor's complete communities. Because we've shifted the attention and the resources to say, hey, Scott, if you're at if you're at T-Mobile, if you want to partner with the city of Houston, these are the areas that we've identified that have high socioeconomic needs, on
Mhm.
top of needing access to computers and internet. So we started with that, and then we partnered with our GIS planning department, and we said, "Hey, we ideally, what this is the data that we would like to have: that location by location, specific addresses, real time data that
Mhm.
we want." And man, I fought that fight like I was fighting for my life, trying to make that happen, and I had to again compromise and say, "Well, if we can't get that, what can we work with?" And it's not perfect. We had to use FCC data, ACS data, you
Mhm.
know, but that's what we had, and that got us started. You know,
So let me push back
oh
on that
yeah,
real quick. Let me jump in there because you said you fought for it and you had to compromise.
yeah,
What was the pushback for
you
providing
know,
granular local level data? What was in the city of Houston where NASA is, where NASA
yeah,
consumes and relies on, vast amount of data and scientists?
yeah,
What was the pushback from, I'm not going to say from who, what was the pushback
yeah.
from getting that level of granularity and that level of data to support your efforts?
Opening the piggy bank to fund it. It
Ah.
takes funds, and I do, but I'll take care of 2 points with this statement. I realized that because I spent time in education, I knew at the campus level they were collecting that data, that specific, granular, real time, September 2022 data. So I made sure that I introduced the city to people over at HISD so they could explain to them, like, when you, Scott, you come to my school, and it speaks to the many hats educators wear. You come to my school, I'm collecting that survey data. How many
Mhm.
people are in your home? Where do you live? Do you have internet? Do you have a computer? Do you have a hotspot? Boom, I can enter it into a system, create a data dashboard, and create GIS mapping. And so that is where I would like to see the city go, but it would take funds to do that. And so
Right.
what I had to do, I said, okay, we take this data that we have available to us, but let's create a checks and balances system. We know at HISD, they're collecting this type of data that we need. We know that anchor institutions and community-based organizations, they're collecting that type of data the specific granular data that we need to be specific. We need to compare notes. And that gets back to my point about communicating and collaborating. Hey, you're in Acres Home. This is what my data says. What does your data say? Am I off?
So let's keep on that topic of mapping. I know that due to your leadership in the city of Houston, created interactive maps to identify geographical gaps in broadband connectivity and access in Houston. Please share with us and for the audience the city's data collection efforts and the results of those mapping initiatives and efforts.
Yeah, so when I joined on, I had the understanding of the importance of data. In my financial days, data was important. I'm working with the funds world, funds performance. People want to know how their fund is performing compared to other funds. Should we make adjustments? Should we add? Should we subtract from this portfolio? I go into the education world. I have 25 plus students. I need to move the needle in 12 months to make them help them progress in their education. And so before they even step foot in the classroom, I need data on their education, their social and emotional growth, their physical growth. I need all that data to be able to put together a plan for them and throughout the year. Switch over to education leadership. Same thing is true for the students, now the teachers as well, the finances, the operations as well. And so I come into this role and like, we have to know where we need to go. And we only know that with the data.
Mhm.
So I had a very particular direction. I wanted to see the data go. I wanted the data go. And that was very specific, address by address, location by location data. So be granular, not just block data, but granular at Scott's house, XYZ Lane. There are X amount of people and they need internet access, or they have it and they need high quality internet access. And so it was pushing to get us there. We couldn't get there yet. It was due to funding, because that type of service will require some money. But what I did have available to me was my experience in education, where I knew that in education at the campus level, and it speaks to the many hats that educators wear, they were completing that survey data to make sure they knew which students needed internet connection, which students needed computer devices. So you show up to school, Scott, where you live, how many people live with you, do you have a computer, internet, hotspot, some
Mhm.
way to be connected at home. And so what I did, I introduced members of the city of Houston to HISD that's doing a great job in collecting that data, and just be able to compare notes and work with community anchor institutions as well and say, this is the data that we have. Are we on the right track? Is this right? Can we compare notes? And that's when speaks back to the point on communication and collaboration. And so that's where our data is now. And we have a map. It touches on the entire city, but specifically it highlights these 10 neighborhoods that are in the mayor's complete communities, because again, to send that message that our attention and focus is on these 10 neighborhoods.
Mhm.
So when you take a look at the map, you'll see, there's a bold border around each of those communities, because that's where our focus is. And I mean, you have the map, Scott, and I know, we open to your feedback, look it over, break it down, and then we can set up another meeting to discuss that with the city of Houston, because we just want to. We found a good starting point. We know
Mhm.
it's not perfect, but we found a good starting point, and we'll just continue to improve on it.
Yeah, and we can see the map right now. I'll bring it up here for the audience to see. We'll also put a link to it here, and so just so that the audience can understand, Houston Independent School District, some other local community anchor institutions and agencies were all collecting data. You led the effort to collect all of that information in one repository, if you will,
Yes.
and on top of your digital equity focus and broadband availability focus to combine all of that into one comprehensive map that we see right now.
Yep.
Um, so let me build on that and push on that just a little bit. So
Yeah.
you've done that. You worked with all of these agencies. So why is local community mapping and data collection so important? And what can cities or urban areas and rural areas, if you will, and state broadband offices, what can they learn and improve by doing so? Right, by collecting this
Yeah.
granular data, what do they learn and what can they use that information to then do and improve on
Yeah.
behalf of the residents, the citizens, and the businesses?
I think what you learn, what you get out of those efforts is that real time data. September 2022, that school collects that data. You have that data readily and available, and it's specific and it's granular, and it's straight from the horse's mouth, for lack of a better term. It's straight from the source. Whereas if we use census data or 477 data, it may be like a block, or it may be a guesstimate.
Mhm.
It may be a guesstimate.
The randomized samples,
Yeah,
right? Randomized collection
yeah,
versus we know that house, that street, that
absolutely,
neighborhood, that family. We get that data and
absolutely.
what? Yep, absolutely.
That's
Yep.
what you get from those organizations. And when you're working with those organizations, not just some data, but just these efforts in general, these are organizations that their boots on the ground, they interact and they serve these communities on a daily basis. And so when you partner with them, they're showing up to these residents and they have their relationship. And so they're able to easily say, hey, this is what we need and this is why. And there's a better relationship and exchange of information there. You may show up in your government capacity, and these are communities that have had bad encounters with government, or they may not be able to, or want to provide certain information directly to a government source.
Mhm.
So there's that, there's that layer as well, and it's just a reality. It's not my opinion; it's a reality. So you have that layer as well. So just the communication, the flow of information, the data, you'll put yourself in a better position to get
Mhm.
reliable, real speed data when you partner with community anchor institutions, schools, those people that are boots on the ground, gathering that data on a regularly basis.
Yeah. I think another reason it will help you as well is Houston is known and has been named as one of the most diverse cities in the United States, with a vast various differences, not just ethnicity, but also other demographic, socioeconomic, and
Yes,
demographic differences, if you will. And so, understanding those nuances, community to community, family to family, can only help the city understand and operate better in the
absolutely.
provision of services and the provision of opportunities, right?
Yes, yes,
I think that's another one. I want to talk a little bit about this NDIA award, this Trailblazer Award that
yeah,
we'll talk about that, and that you've received distinction because it highlights a number of different categories of distinction,
yes.
and we'll talk about that if you can just briefly, and then we'll wrap up, and then we'll get you out of here. But I appreciate your time today. But I did not want to go any further without talking about this Trailblazer Award, right? And I think it's large in part due to your efforts and your leadership since you've been here. So if you can talk a little bit about the NDIA's award of the Trailblazer Award to the city of Houston for your efforts
Absolutely.
in equity and inclusion.
Yeah, so that Trailblazer Award is, there's several factors. Do you have dedicated team, dedicated staff, individuals that is supporting this digital equity work in your city? Are you providing free or affordable internet on a sustainable basis in your city? Do you have a digital equity plan? Do you have mapping and data, survey results, research? So it touches on so many different factors, and NDIA is such I want to say staple in this digital equity, digital inclusion work. If
Mhm.
you don't know them, please visit their site, learn more, figure out how and learn how you can support their efforts. But they're a staple in making sure that nationwide the light is shed on digital equity, digital inclusion, those underserved, unserved areas. And I just wanted to show the city of Houston because again, prior to me joining, they had digital equity efforts, but I don't think there was any communication between the city and NDIA.
Mhm.
And so, just to introduce the city to NDIA and say, you with access to NDIA, you give access and relationships to anybody in this country that is doing this work and are trying to achieve the same goals as you. And so, to drive that point home even further, said, I'll show you. This is our first time being recognized. You've been doing this work, but
Mhm.
look at the work we're doing now, and let's share that with everybody else. Let's apply and let's see if we can get awarded this Trailblazer Award because it is a big deal. And I made sure it was a big deal. Like, hey, the mayor needs to know, everybody needs to know that the city of Houston is being recognized on such a national level by this amazing organization. And I know from now on, I think everybody will apply and make sure that we're checking off the boxes in each of those indicators that they use to determine who's on their list or not.
Absolutely. And we'll put the indicators up right now. I think of all of these areas of distinction are in part due to your leadership. Of course, not solely to you. You have team, you have support there in the mayor's office and the local leaders that are there. But again, this is in part due to your leadership and efforts to highlight digital equity and inclusion there in the city of Houston. You should be recognized for that. So congratulations. I want to shift back a little bit. We
Yeah.
were talking about mapping and how important it is for local communities to understand the nuances in their communities. Do you have any concerns with the FCC's new data maps from what you know or may have learned thus far? And are there any recommendations you have for the Texas Broadband Office and the development of either that mapping program or that
Yeah.
challenge process that will govern the BEAD program?
Yeah. So what I'll say, I am glad we're moving in the direction of address to address, location to location data. That is something that I'm glad, and I think it's encouraging to see that we're moving in that direction. They have the challenge basis, so there's going to be some conflicting data points, and again, I'm just glad that we're having that conversation because at one point it was just, I'm an ISP. This is the data that I have. I may share it or I may not.
Mhm.
I will share it if there's going to be something in return for me. But why is it my benefit to share this data with you, and you take the data and you may go over to the competitor and you decide to establish a relationship with them. So the fact that the ISPs are providing the data, the FCC is checking in on that data, and they're allowing us to say, whoa, 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 I don't think that data is correct, and this is why. I think it's moving us in the right direction. The problem is just that, though, there are going to be so many differing data sets that come
Mhm.
in. And so I did ask this to the FCC. When that happens, there's this challenge process. Scott, you submit your data from Verizon. I say City of Houston, no, this is our data. And FCC says, well, this is our data. And it's like a Texas standoff. Like who had who. So
Right.
so in that event, who decides what's right or wrong? And I think the FCC has that power to ultimately say, well, this is what it should be. And and it,
I don't want the FCC to have that power.
well, yeah,
I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be awfully frank with you. I know I'm gonna
yeah,
say what you can't say. I don't want
well,
the, and here's my concern, and I'll be honest with you, right?
yeah,
Everything that we do, like you said, our financial markets are data driven,
yeah,
education policies data driven, right? Everything that we do is data driven. Data
yeah,
doesn't get you answers; it gets you to ask better questions.
yeah,
But then when it comes to broadband service, everybody's, when I say everyone, the monopolistic service providers are afraid of data. I don't
yes,
know why. I know why, but
yeah, yeah,
again, it boggles the mind, right? That we have data driving everything that we do
yes,
outside of broadband.
I
And
agree.
then when it comes to broadband, all of a sudden, we don't want to, or there's certain factions that don't want to utilize data. And again, data doesn't provide answers to the questions.
Yeah,
It gets you to ask better questions
yes,
so
I
that you
agree.
can get the more accurate answers, right? And so I think there's a lot of work that we have to do. The FCC is going to have govern this data map and fabric process on its own. I'm glad that the company that I work for, is launching a community broadband toolkit, working with trusted industry
Yep,
leaders and academicians, and with sound methodological approaches. Working with cities like Houston to utilize the data that you have. I think that's important.
absolutely.
You know this with NASA being there. How much data does
Yeah,
NASA crunch on a daily basis to understand how to get to the moon or to Mars or the space station? But yet, when it comes to the provision of broadband services for our homes and businesses, there are some factions that don't want data. It amazes me. But anyway, let's move on. All right, Josh. So that leads me to our next segment, which is my favorite of the show, and that is when we get to ask the question, "Who is Joshua Williams?" We get to know you, the person, right? So I was not surprised to learn that you have an extensive business background and teaching background. Particularly, you have focused on developing executive and leadership programs for student and teacher achievement and development, and on the operational level for improved efficiency and effectiveness. So, my question in this segment is, how has your leadership experience in teaching and in business influenced your digital equity work?
Oh, absolutely. You know, my background, professional and personal, is I kind of specialize in doing more with less. And so when I transitioned into the finance world, I'm like, wow, I can do more with more. But in the education world, again, having to do more with less. And so it's just sparked or sustained, I wouldn't even say sparked, it's just sustained the need to hustle and the need to move the needle and the need to have goals and to be able to track those goals and then refine, be adjustable and be flexible and adapt. And so being able to do that on a personal level and a professional level prior to joining this work, it was just, it made it seamless. It's like I've picked up all these different tools on a personal, professional level, these experiences, these wins, these losses that could transfer easily into this work, and that's what we did. And as you mentioned, we had a lot of wins to celebrate within months, but it was because of those experiences and those skills, and me wanted to make sure that I left with something. I left and I
Mhm.
knew that something was accomplished. And in addition to handing you a plan, but we actually have initiatives that are up and running and then that are going to be sustainable and running when I transition out and whoever else comes in.
Right. So you mentioned a lot in a short amount of time. So you jump into your fellowship, you immediately jump on the and start working on the strategic plan, the strategic master plan for digital equity. You author the white paper, you recommend the digital equity office, you're involved in setting up the office, you're in the mapping initiative, you're working with all of the agencies and the providers and the partners. So what do you do in your spare time?
Oh well, something that so a lot of people in this space may not know, but spare time, I actually am a coach and a practitioner of Krav Maga, which that a lot of people don't know that about me, which
Right.
is Israeli self defense. Love doing that. Love training youth and kids in that, and just building them up. But also, we do a lot of work with women's shelters, domestic abuse victims, and et cetera, just to rebuild them, make them mentally stronger, physically stronger, emotionally stronger. So that's something that I do in my spare time. And as you know, before we started, spent a lot of time with my little Tasmanian devil, my daughter Amory. um, a lot of time with her, and I love that, and I cherish that, and just music. I know we're going to talk about music briefly. Just enjoying music and reading. Those are like the main things in the little amount of spare time that I have.
Right, I was about to say you put
That
crack
was
all
a lot of
you
content.
jam all that
Yeah,
into your spare time.
literally.
Being a parent, being a coach, self defense, working in the community, giving back,
Yeah,
and spending time with your daughter. I know that time is precious. So you brought it up. So let's jump right into that. So Houston has long been, as we talked about, a haven for the arts, food, and music,
yeah,
but recently achieved more mainstream acknowledgement for music.
yeah,
Beyonce, Meg Thee Stallion, my genre,
yeah.
Bun B, UGK, Devin the Dude, and others. What do you enjoy most about the Houston culture scene, and what are your favorite artists or establishments there in the local Houston community?
Well, what I love about Houston is it is it's a mixing pot. We spoke about that, prior to the call as well. You have so many different backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, and I love that about the city. And so that's something that I always enjoy. And with that, you get a chance to enjoy those different backgrounds and cultures and ethnicities. So there are a lot of festivals that happen that we love to go to. There's a Greek festival, there's an African festival, there's a Caribbean festival. So those are always great because in those festivals, they celebrate their culture and you get to experience that with them. And you get to learn that, oh, you live right here with me. I can continue learning more about this. So that's something that I love about the city. Musically, I want to put this out there. You may not know, but UGK, me and Scott are big supporters and students of UGK. So I want to say that that is my favorite group. There's a legendary group, and the thing we spoke about is just the timelessness of their music. Like there's a record thing came out in I think it was '96 called "Riding Dirty." I still
Yep.
listen to that like it just came out, and that
Every single day. That's my gym. Riding dirty
no
is yeah.
skips. You can just press play and you can have a
Yeah.
Sunday fun day and drive around, enjoy the city, listen to their music. So, but they have a lot of like icons and legends in the Houston. Like we and you as well. We enjoyed and loved them prior to the mainstream success. So we're happy to see the mainstream success come and hopefully it'll stay. But yeah, if you everything you would like to enjoy here, you get a chance to enjoy festivals, sports, entertainment, arts, museums. It's all here. You gotta love it.
Absolutely. What's your favorite restaurant in the Houston area?
Oh, my favorite. There's so many. I will tell you
Don't
my
say the turkey leg hut.
well, not yet. No. My my favorite at the time is called Miko's Hot Chicken.
Okay.
Black owned
Okay.
business in the Heights area. That is my current favorite. There's so many though. And
I went to is it Lucille's or
yes,
Lucy's?
yes,
Oh
and
my
yeah,
God, that was the best. That was the best. We sat. My wife and
yeah,
I went. We sat outside. It was yeah. I didn't want to leave. I mean,
absolutely,
it was dish after dish. I was like, oh, I was back in my grandmother's kitchen again,
yeah,
and she was
yeah.
serving them up hot and fresh. So I was
Absolutely.
I
Lucille's
was
is
loving it.
lovely. Food in that
Absolutely.
area and that environment, you can't lose.
So, all right, so you experience a lot. Obviously, that's one of the benefits of living in a very diverse culture and diverse city. You get to experience the various luxuries, if you will, of music, art, food, and culture. But let's shift on what's next for you, right? I think you'd be the perfect candidate for either a private company or a state broadband office to benefit from your experience. But what's next for you as your fellowship now? I guess starts to wind down
Yeah.
and wrap up.
Yeah. So in the immediate, it is just that making sure that the work and the plans that we've established and we've started, they are able to sustain. I was saying sustainability so much that they started a bingo game, and when I would say the word, somebody would yell bingo. But I'm like, that's okay because we want to make sure myself and everybody with Fuse that is at the forefront of your mind the entire 12 months that you have. Like when I leave, will the work leave with me or will it live on?
Mm.
And so I'm proud that that's my biggest accomplishment that I'm proud of is that a lot of the work we've established a free we provide free community Wi-Fi for about 23 apartment complexes and 12 Wi-Fi parks.
Hmm.
That's for those complexes, it's completely free, and we have partners in place. They take care of the technical side, and then we have a nonprofit here, Bridging the Digital Divide, that takes care of reading readiness, after school tutoring, digital literacy skills for veterans, etc. And that has been going on for about a year now. And we haven't had to touch anything. It just functions, and that was my key that I wanted to. That was what I wanted to walk away from. That we have things in place that just function. So that's my immediate next step, is making sure that everything is sustainable. After that, I just want to continue to build partnerships, programs, find resources, and consult with social impact agencies and
Hmm.
individuals that are making sure that organizations and people in need are getting the resources that they, specifically the funds
Hmm.
that they need. And that's my big piece. So I'm looking into venture philanthropy. Go ahead and getting ahead of the networking, because like that, it will be January 2023, and my time will be up. So networking and learning about venture philanthropy, speaking with people about corporate social responsibility and social
Mhm.
impact, and again, just discussing, partnerships, programs, resources, and advising that I can offer to them and the end users that they serve.
No, absolutely. That's great. Do you see yourself staying in? I know we talked about that, but staying exclusively in the public sector, or some type of hybrid role where you're doing both? Because I would think with your experience,
Yeah,
you several times you've highlighted having the funding available, right?
yeah,
Having the funds available to
yeah,
accomplish the strategic vision and leadership that you bring is very important, right? It's
yes,
one thing to have the vision and the strategy, but if
absolutely,
there's no money to implement, right, to effectuate that,
yeah.
you just go to bed with good ideas at night, right?
That's right. It's just a dream. It's
Just a
just a
dream.
dream, and so yeah, I meeting with and partnering or hoping to partner with agencies. It can be private. It can be a lot of foundations I've learned and beginning to begin relationships with, which is a lot of times they're subsidiaries of corporations, but just people that are doing the work. I
Right,
will say that, like, you are genuinely doing the work. It's not a PR statement.
right.
It's not for an Instagram post, but the proof is there. Like, we funded this initiative, we funded this organization, and now you can see the benefits of the funds we provided, or the resources, whatever.
Right.
If it's monetarily, if it's some tangible resource that we're providing to these people, and here's the numbers and here's the proof of the impact that we're having. I'm my eyes get big and my ears get even wider
Mhm.
when people communicate that to me and they display that to me. So
Yeah. Yeah, right. It reminds me of a perfect Devin the Dude song, right? You take the
yeah,
R&B hook with a guitar and singing in the background,
yeah,
and you tell a story, right? And you
absolutely,
narrate that story and you navigate and you take that listener through that journey,
yeah,
right? You think of the movie Friday, right? Taking you through the journey of what your typical day is like. Well,
absolutely,
Josh, I want to thank you for taking us through your day and your time there with the city of Houston. Your efforts have been very, very fruitful, and on behalf of the city residents and the businesses there, I know they're extremely, extremely thankful to you for your efforts. And I wish you much success as you indeed move forward. So, with that, we will take it to a close. So, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And again, my special thanks to Joshua Williams for his guest appearance today, and for the city of Houston for allowing him to join. To continue our discussion, please join me on LinkedIn and Twitter at SDWoods_ESQ, and of course on our broadband.money digital community. Ready or Not with Scott Woods is brought to you by Ready.net and Broadband.money, the fastest and easiest way to win broadband grants for your community. To access more information, please visit us at broadband.money. And please join me again for episode number 4 of the Ready or Not podcast next month for our continuation of lively and relevant discussions. Until then, be well and Godspeed.
Every